There have been arguments here and there that if you look at the numbers that are here participating in our market and you compare it to that with South Africa or Morocco or Egypt, and you see that we have fewer companies who are actually dealing in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So this opening is welcoming. And of course, FISIN, which is of course an indigenous pharmaceutical company, also participating here and releasing its own equity in the market also means a lot. But by and large, the market is still growing. And I think there's a whole lot that, of course, people can leverage within the Nigerian stock market. Opportunity for wealth creation is huge.
This is Souq Business Landscape.
Let's start with the capital market. Yes, stocks this morning. New listings by FISIN Healthcare and Chapel Hill Denham Nerit led activity on the Nigerian Exchange, highlighting a 177.7 billion naira trading after shifting investors' appetite. Now, although the total turnover value declined slightly compared to the previous week, market data shows a notable reduction in losing stock, signaling a gradual recovery and sentiment heading to March. Now, investors traded 3.695 billion naira shares valued at 177.68 billion naira in 370,980 deals during the week, compared to the 5.49 billion shares worth 196.709 billion naira in 370,233 deals recorded in the previous trading week. Doctor, we're opening the week with some positive.
Yeah, of course, that's the dynamic of the stock market. It's up, it's down tomorrow, next tomorrow is up. So that dynamics shows also how the appetite of investors are in the market. But I think this story is quite very, very important to me as a person, especially looking at the side of the Chapel Hill Denham participation in the NGX. Real estate, which is quite very important, real estate investment. And I've been one advocate of that kind of property development model for Nigeria. You see the way they do in United Arab Emirates, where you have companies who are registered, and you don't need to own a house. You just can buy a house in the middle of a house. And I think this is what is coming in there. And that's a model that is quite profitable. For those who travel a lot, you go to the United Arab Emirates those days, you see people, as you are coming down the airplane, they are pulling you to one corner and telling you there is an opportunity for investment. And of course, a lot of them might even come to Nigeria to stay in even big hotels, and they tell you and say, oh, we have profitable property where you can invest your money. This is built massively, and you could just buy one room in a massive building that is housing over 350 different flats. And you just own your room and you are there. And the way they do it there, of course, these houses are not something that you just buy and live. The people who manages the house help you to actually monetize it such that when you are not in town, the house can be on rent. And so you are getting regular dividend from time to time. And people put that money there. But when you want to come to town, you want to use the apartment, you give them a notice of like 6 months, and then they can also plan it for you such that you can stay just 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, it's open for rent, and then you are earning your rental income from that property. So I think it's a model that is beautiful, and I think it's something that is worth supporting. And if that also open a door for other investors to participate in that kind of a commercial real estate model, I think is worth the while. So seeing that Chapel Hill Denham is pursuing that angle themselves, and themselves are now participating in the market proper, just like NGX itself is participating in the market. And I think we need a lot of participation. There have been arguments here and there that if you look at the numbers that are here participating in our market, and you compare to that with South Africa or Morocco or Egypt, and you see that we have fewer companies who are actually dealing in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. So this opening is welcoming. And of course, FISIN, which is of course an indigenous pharmaceutical company, also participating here and relisting its own equity in the market also means a lot. But by and large, the market is still growing. And I think there's a whole lot that, of course, people can leverage within the Nigerian stock market. Opportunity for wealth creation is huge. We have not scratched the surface of economy at all. And I think that's why investors, whether local or foreign, should come with a lot of portfolio to buy into these looming opportunities within the Nigerian stock eco space.
All right, so I want us to dissect this bit by bit. Let's start with the real estate. Over the past week, we've seen the market go up, come down. Nigerians, we're used to short-term investments. We always like to put money here, and once we see a bit of profit, we pull out, then we come back again. So looking at the real estate, there's a whole lot of reform going on in real estate now, especially in Lagos with the land tenancy law and all that. Do you think that if we have more of these major real estate investors come in, it will create some sort of boom in the real estate industry? Maybe we would have access to homes, rent per month or something, something that would actually benefit the citizens.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. If it works elsewhere, there's no other way to say that it can also work here. And you just look at the model, the way it is working. And that is the point, of course, that I'm trying to also point out here. That we're not just looking at real estate as people just building property and selling them off, but we're seeing an investment into real estate where people can actually get dividends. Because if you build a property that you're selling for 1 billion, only very few people may have access to that 1 billion to buy. And therefore, that money, you will not be able to really turn it over in good time. If you even put it in rent, it can become something that is not be actually yielding you everyday liquid cash. So yes, the property may be there, the value could be appreciated, but in terms of what you get regularly, may not even be able to have it in terms of people coming to pay rent and all of all that. So the model that, of course, which is what the Nigerian real estate investment look like, is a situation where people can buy into a big project. Just looking at like this Necon building, 32 floors, and each floor has about maybe 20 rooms or thereabout. So I may not be able to buy land and build, but I have some money, I can invest it in a studio apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment.
Like the Co-Atlantic.
Yes, within the major building. And of course, this building is managed by these realtors, and then of course, they are helping us to sell. Not outright sale, but they are letting it out. So as this money is coming in, they are turning it in and out. And then of course, at the end of the year, you get dividend for the property you own in there if you don't want to live in it. And you see, if we have a lot of pool together and have many Nigerians coming in to put resources in this direction, you're going to see a lot of activities within the real estate. And even people who don't have so much money can actually be helped. In short, government, if you even want to do low cost for their citizens, can actually also buy into this and then use the channel to actually deliver adequate housing to its people. So for me, it's a beautiful project that people can invest in, not even just citizens alone. I even see government, state governments, who can also find a way to partner with these realtors and ensure that home for all can actually be delivered.
All right, what about pharmaceuticals? I mean, if you look at the pharmaceutical sector, we still have a whole lot of our drugs coming in from outside the shores. And yet we have pharmaceutical companies in Nigeria, local pharmaceutical companies. So do you think if they go into the capital market, they will not just reap all the gains and not in a way, create some sort of ripple effect in the economy, thereby producing more drugs?
Yeah, I think what is also meant for fixing, if you have followed their trajectory, I remember on Friday I was going toward Ilukbeju and I was telling my colleagues, look at the humble place where fixing started from. One flat where they were operating there at Ilukbeju bypass. So I was pointing hand to it and I said that was where fixing started off from. And we know how it started until they had to get their own property along Ikorodu Road where they are right now. And of course, they become a very big brand in Nigeria, selling all manners of pharmaceuticals. But we do know that a lot of these things comes in by import because there's not so much investment in pharmacology here in Nigeria. And I think that is quite also very important to understand the differences. Pharmacy, a lot of people study pharmacy here, and what's basically pharmacy is dispensing of drugs. Yes, so, but the production of drug is what we actually need to focus on. Because when you look at the African ecosystem, one of the things that you will see is the fact that we have local curative medicines here that are actually not being studied. And that is quite fundamental. I think that we need a lot of scientists from ivory towers to actually partner with local herbs makers to see how we can really standardize these things that we call in our local parlance agbo. Some of them work really, and whether you like it or not, except you were not born in the village. We were born in cities where there were no pharmacists, there were no doctors. We had ailments that were treated by these local herbs. And then, of course, and we see them actually produce results. And I think if we scientifically study some of these herbs, it will open up a whole lot of space for us in that sector, the pharmaceutical sector, because we must understand that nature endow us as a people with solution to all our problems. So if you find a particular ailment that is dominant in a place, a solution is also within that place. And if we can follow that and look at people who live in those environments and see what they've been doing to deal with such ailment, you'll be shocked how much we can do in terms of even exporting pharmaceutical products abroad. So that synergy between the locals and the scientists in the ivory towers need to happen. And I think that's my advocacy, really. Maybe with this listing and facing having a lot of revenue flowing in from whether it's a private placement or the IPO, whatever it is, will even help to build this synergy. Seeing a situation where they can partner with University of Ibadan, for example, University of Ife, OAU, or the University of Benin, or Ahmadu Bello University, from all across the region. And you'll find that we can see local solutions to our problems. And that will not just be helping the health sector, it will actually also be helping and developing our economy big time. So we need that huge investment and see how we can actually use our natural materials rather than synthetic product in terms of drug manufacture. There's so much we can harvest from our forests. There's so much we can harvest from the nature around us to provide cure. So coming into the market for me is a plus for Fitsin, and we do hope that other younger pharmaceutical companies also will take a cue from what Fitsin is doing today, and then of course come into the market, raise sufficient fund, and let's develop this industry so that we are not just importers of drug, we become also exporter of curative medicines.
All right, I like how you really narrated this herbal drugs and every other thing. So how do we get the local doctor, let me not use doctor because it might not be a doctor, how do we get Mr. Chukwudi, who does local herbs to cure malaria and some of these things? We even have some who have even been manufactured in PET bottles, but they are doing medium scale. You see them around the local beer parlors and all that. How do we get them from that particular point to large scale, to going into the stock market? Because Chukwudi, all he does is probably goes in buses and markets there. So if you now tell him, why not come into the capital market, he's looking at you like, I don't get money. Where I want to see that kind of money?
Yeah, but you see, like I always say, if you look at how people run businesses elsewhere and compare to what we do here, sometimes we pride ourselves in being CEOs, and therefore we can manage our little things and it does not grow out of our hands. And that's the kind of models that are common around here. You see a lot of businesses fragmenting. But when you go to the West and you see, for example, in America, you see a lot of people who have a very viable brands and yet sell it to other people they feel that have better competitive advantage in terms of building ecosystem out of it. So I think that's a model that really would need to suffice for us as a people. Take, for example, Facebook was already doing excellently very well before it was sold. And then, of course, somebody else had to invest in it and see how they can make it. And you see all our products, the way it works like that. And you see that also happening in industries, manufacturing, and the rest of it. We can copy that model here. That I don't necessarily need to be a CEO. I can develop a product, sell it to a bigger company that can actually commercialize it. And then, of course, I get royalty from it. And in that case, I can focus my energy to develop new products that I can also sell with time. And if that is our major approach, then, of course, we're going to get a lot of results. But I think where the gap actually is for us is what I have said earlier on, is a gap between the ivory towers and the town. So the town and the GAN in Nigeria, the gap is wide. We don't attempt to see how young people who are in school and learning research can be encouraged to actually contribute to industry growth. Take, for example, I was speaking with somebody on Saturday and I said, for example, students who are on industrial attachment or training, as it is called, to come into the workspace to see how things are done and see how they can improve what is currently on the ground. But unfortunately here, I was talking to the guy and he said to me, oh, our company don't take any IT that is less than 1 year. I said, but that's not fine. People should be able to come to your environment and study. And then that's the only way they can make contribution. When you see our university environment, the way it's structured, especially for the undergraduate, you see people writing projects and they cannot connect the project to solutions on the problem at hand. So we have what societal problem. What academy is supposed to actually mean is that we have society problem, and then we are researching it and providing solution to those problems. But you see, a lot of people just choose topic. Now AI has helped us so well. So we just say, what topic do I need to write on? And then, of course, those things, after writing them, they are on the shelf. And somehow you find some of those research project with market women who are selling bean cake and moi moi, and they are using them to wrap them because they are not turning into real assets anymore, really. And that's not the way it should actually look like. We see situations where people who are writing research are actually facing industry-related problem. Yes, this is a financial, I am studying maybe accounting or finance in a university. Then I have opportunity to look at what are the problems in the banking environment or the financial sector. What can I contribute in terms of my study? But for me to be able to have that contribution, I must have the opportunity to also go to understudy the banks. And that's where the synergy will really work. So when you're looking at, for example, pharmaceutical companies, you're looking at Department of Pharmacies in university, microbiology, biochemistry. You see, all these things are all interrelated. All they do is to study plants and study leaves and see what are the curative cure that are in it. And then how do we transition this from just being leaf in the farm to becoming items on the shelves in the supermarkets or in the pharmacy shops. So this is what, of course, it should be all about. And we have this exposure where students are allowed to come into these industries And then, of course, understudy what is happening, see the problem, and see how we can refine and make it work better. In that case, you find that all the researches that are being done by our institution will become solutions to societal problem. And I think that gap is what is missing. So there need to be a synergy. There need to be a synergy that even the small manufacturer also will be able to say, okay, how do we mobilize and bring our resources together so that we can produce in scale and have more profit than I am producing my own individually, and the necessary traction is not coming. So for me, it's that understanding of us changing our model and then see how we can synergize with big corporations who are actually having chairs in universities, and they will be the people to drive this process of commercialization of whatever solution that we find from ivory towers.